G'day, welcome back. This is my next video in the series Edge Cases, where I look at endgames with drawing zones and try and understand, by looking very closely at the edge of those zones, what are the main attacking resources for the stronger team and the defensive resources for the weaker side. Now, I've already looked at a couple of positions like that, including the queen versus a rook pawn on the 7th rank. What we came up with there was that there's an established drawing zone based on the fact that the stronger side's king can move towards the winning square and assist in a checkmate pattern. So now I'm moving on to another example, which is quite simple, but want to make sure we don't miss anything else, and that is the queen versus bishop's pawn on the 7th rank. And as with the rook's pawn, there is a drawing resource which you have to know, and as a result there's only a certain drawing zone. The king has to be fairly close to assist in checkmating patterns. You can see the position we're going to look at there on the thumbnail, and you can see in that situation white king, in this case the stronger side, will have to be on those red squares or closer to be able to effect a checkmate. So it's quite a small zone. It's actually smaller than the zone for a rook pawn. In a lot of cases black can just play king to a1 in this case, and white would be unable to take the c pawn. Okay, so let's crack on. Let's have a look at bring up Keres page later. First of all, just look quickly at the Wikipedia page on this. It's the same page as last time, queen versus pawn endgame. We've looked at the rook pawn drawing zone in the past, which is this one here, which is a 5x5 box missing a corner. And remember that white had this premise that if he was within 2 squares of these 2 squares b3 or c2, he could enforce checkmate. Now we're moving on to the bishop pawn position, and this is basically the diagram. We have a king on b2 supporting a pawn on c2, and you can see the same thing. You have to be inside these x's to be able to enforce a win for the white side. Otherwise, it's a draw for black. In fact, this is simpler than before, because often there's a certain technique which black would need to draw. In this case, it's relevant. If if white's outside those boxes, then black will just pawn his queen, and it will be over. So we're going to look at that position today, and then in a later video we'll look at the other position. You can see the difference here when the king is on the wrong side, in inverted commas, of the bishop's pawn. The stalemate trick doesn't work straight away, so black either has to spend time to get into the corner or in fact can get checkmated on the other side, so that the drawing zone is huge in this case. You can see the big difference, and we'll move on to that in later videos. So now let's I brought up my analysis software here, and you can see that it's showing you the drawing zone red boxes. Doesn't include the 5th rank at all. First 4 squares of A, B, and C, and only the first 2 squares of D and E. Idea is that the position of the queen has no real impact on this. Basically, that is the drawing. So it's quite a fixed one. We'll have a look a bit more closely. And the other thing I would like to just have a look at here, let's just stick the queen down, just have a look at what the drawing zone is for different king positions. If the king's away, then obviously white will win. But actually in this position, it's kind of funny. Actually, the white king only wins in certain positions, even with the black king there on the 6th rank. As with before, what I'll do is I'll do the analysis. It'll come up with the solutions, and we'll get a general idea of what the techniques are. Remember, the arrows are the way. Shows the first move. In this case, is if the white king is on e1, then it would be queen to b4 check. And then, having improved the position of the white queen, you then play king d2. We then play king d2. So trivial win after that. So you can see a lot of the solutions here. If the king is on the e file, basically it is improved the position of the white queen and then move to the d2 square, and that will. And if white is on these other squares, the 4th rank, then once again it's improve the position of the white queen and then move the king up to, in that case, moves up to c3, but often move the king up to b3, and then even if black promotes, then white will be checkmate. We'll look at that in more detail when we go to the analysis board. So let's have a look what Keres says about that. So let's have a look at this, the text below the chart. This position is of course drawn. Okay, the white king's too far away. In order to win, the white king must be within the indicated area. On e3 and e1, he can easily stop the pawn by subsequent king d2, so being within one move of king d2, having used the queen to get into a better position first. Equally has no trouble, as queen g2 pins the pawn, king b1, king b3, promote the queen, and then queen a2. So we'll see that in a few of the continuations. Here's the first position we're going to look at. The king is on e1. Let's have a look at what a suggested method is. Check. If the king goes in front of the pawn, I mean, there's a few choices here. If the king goes in front of the pawn, then he's just sort of stopped already. So logically, you move away, and then king attacks the pawn. Pawn's going to. Okay, let's look at the next game. So now the king's on. King was on d2 already. We just stop the pawn from queening. It's a simple win. That's the same technique if the king is on e2 or d3 or e3. So now looks at a4. a4 is a different situation. Let's have a look at what goes on there. Through the position of the queen, check. Advance the king, promote, check. Okay, this is tricky. If black promoted to a queen, then queen a1 would have been made already. So now, sorry. Let's see how we win in this position. Promote to a knight, move across. Knight is trapped. That is the problem, right? King is on b4. We've got the same technique. That's actually made. The key of the box, which is actually the box is there, is being within one move of those two squares. If you get to d2, then you can pick up the pawn. If you get to b3, then even if black promotes, you can checkmate. But now what we'll do is let's just go through the position which Keres put on the board with a king on b5. So he says king on b5. Let's do that. Okay, let's see. Queen b2, king to b1, threatening to promote. Queen to e4, that's good. We pin the pawn so that can't move yet. King b2, queen e2, so the queen's advanced nicely. Now, if we play king b1 now, there is a winning line. Let's go through that. King b1 now, 4, to queen, king b3, it's a win. Now, you'll see the difference in the next line. So the winning line is actually king to a1, right? Taking advantage of the fact that the pawn can't be taken. And then now, if we advance, for instance, then we queen over. If we don't advance, the line which Keres gives, queen d2 to stop queening. b1, now we're threatening again. Yeah, so this is interesting because now white cannot play the move he wants to play. Queen is attacked. So that is the type of resources black has to take advantage of, fully take advantage of the stalemate. As I say, so the key in this question, the key squares were. Now, before I finish, I want to quickly look at one other position. You can see that position which Keres has from Chess World 1865. So there you can see I've set up that position. I mean, I'll probably never look at that position again. And since I've got the Keres book open on that page, let's go through it. Chess World 1865. So let's see, continue on the next page, which you can't see. Against the pawn on the 6th rank, the queen always wins, except when the pawn cannot be prevented from playing to the 7th rank, as seen in diagram 70. So there must be some trick to it, right? Because normally white might be able to use his queen to stop the pawn from going from, in this case, c3 to c2. White would win easily if his king were not so unfortunately placed on the long diagonal, so it's stopping a pin on the a1 to h8 diagonal. For example, with king on b8. So let's just go through that. The whole point is stopping the black pawn from advancing. Check on the back rank. This is the line Keres gives, king b2, so the pawn can still advance. So in it, so it can't advance. Probably best not to get in front of the pawn. And then now, if we have to make progress, we have to push it. And then now we go here, and we're going there next move. Right, so that's the normal situation. This is a bad king position. So 10 continuation, check. 2. Queen b7, check. Check we got. 1, threatening to move the pawn again. King f6. Move closer. b2, now it's advanced, and we are outside. So let's have a look at the defense here. We'll see this in a later video. Queen b2, pin it, threatened queen, pin it, queen, pin it. Right, king d1 loses to king d4. And then that will be checkmating, right? And now we get king to c3. We're kind of blocking the white king from advancing. And what I can do, that's the correct defense. So looking at that position here, it's actually kind of interesting. Let's the green squares are the positions where it is a draw, right? And we just considered the G7 square. It varies around a bit. There are some bad positions. This is, you can see the bad position for the white queen in this situation, right? If the black king, if the white king's on any of those green squares, then once again it's a draw. So the bad position of the queen, access to the wrong diagonals, would allow black to push the pawn, get a draw. Okay, so that's just the first video on the queen and pawn sort of edge cases. We're going to go on to the one with the king on the other side of the pawn later on. And I just wanted to quickly look at that chess world position, which Keres highlighted, because it's it shows some interesting sort of ideas where, you know, you've got to be very conscious of how the queen approaches the pawns, and then where your position of the king is, what diagonals are being blocked, and so on. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that one, and thank you very much for watching.